Well, welcome this afternoon. And we've even survived 4 days of this, haven't we? Not too bad, not too bad. Do you know what a pseudonym is? A pseudonym. A pseudonym is a made-up name, okay? This guy's got a made-up name. Lewis Carroll is his made-up name. His real name is Charles Dodgson, okay? And he decided that he wanted to be creative when he was writing, because he's a very creative writer, so he wanted to do something with his name. And so what he did was he took the name Charles Dodgson and translated it into German, and then used those words to anglicize, and this is what he comes up with. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going, interesting, interesting. And before we get into this is a story. He is a math teacher. Now, I can't believe I ever talk about a math teacher positively. Okay? I did fine in math in grade school. I really did very well. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, I can just blow through that. That's just fine. That makes sense. Then I got to high school and some idiot started adding letters and signs and all kinds of crazy stuff. Why in the world would you do that with perfectly good numbers? I have no idea. And so I barely made it through algebra, got into geometry, and that was a foreign language. That completely was a foreign language. I had no idea what was going on. And so I foolishly kept asking questions and trying to figure this out. And finally, as the teacher got so frustrated with me, he said, "Sorensen, you're never going to learn this stuff, and you are by far the dumbest person God ever put on this planet. And so just face up, and it's never going to happen." He was right about one thing. I never did learn it. Never did. And to this day, it doesn't make a darn bit of sense. But I decided I didn't quite fit the rest of his description and decided to do something else besides try to make sense out of math. And because of all of that, I I promised myself from that moment on, I will never take another math class. And I was okay with that, and I got clear through. I graduated from high school. I graduated from college because I was able to take some science classes, and back then you could do either science or math. And so I got around to math, and then I got into a master's program of statistics. Oh my goodness. That was one of the worst experiences of my life. But thankfully, we had study groups, and I had helped them on all kinds of other classes, and we got to statistics, and I said, "I'm dead here, people. I am absolute," and bless their hearts, they just hand-carried me through all this, and I barely made it through, but I did get it, and enough to where I could pass that class, but wow. So I can't believe I talk nicely about a math teacher. To me, it just doesn't make sense, but I'm going to talk nicely about this guy, okay? Anyway, but you needed to have that background to have some understanding. Now, he's a math teacher at a school in Oxford, England. And to tell you a little bit about this whole thing, I need to remind you on Monday, I talked about Shakespeare, and I said that I went to Oxford in 2005. While I was there, I went all over town because there's all kinds of things I wanted to see, and I'd read about them, and I wanted to go find all these places. And in the process of all of that, I got acquainted with an individual, and his name was Mark Toothill. And he works at this school. This is the largest school in Oxford. It is called Christ Church. It is huge. To give you an idea of size, these are giant tours and buses. And you can see now, obviously the picture is quite high, but those are big vehicles. And so you can start to see this is a gigantic complex, and it really is. And I got to, in the course of meeting with him and talking with him, I found out that he works here. And he asked me one day, would you like to go on a tour of Christ Church? I said, yes, I would love that, because there's all kinds of things that took place there. And I'm going to show you a lot of those things and tell you about a lot of those things. And it all comes back together because this is where Charles Dodson taught math. And that's one of the things I was so excited about, seeing this school and finding out more about the connection of all of that. Okay. The main street, right through here, the entryway, and the security entryway that you have to go in through. And I did. He got in there, and we started in. This is a gigantic grass quad area, very similar to the grass area you have right out here next to your eating area. Okay? It's beautiful, and it's huge. It's about, that one is about probably 4 times bigger than yours. It is a large, large area. I had been around to these places enough to know that you never, never step on the grass under any circumstances, for any reason, because you don't have the social status to step on the grass. And they will tell you that to your face, point blank. Really? Yeah. Yeah, the only people that are allowed to step on the grass are the professors or higher in the hierarchy of a school. Students or common people are never allowed to step on the grass. And I thought that was kind of strange. Anyway, so we started walking around because we're going to take a tour of this whole complex, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see all of this. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a closer look. And this is more of a ground level look. And so we walked right up here and took one of these walkways, these stairs, because we're trying to get into this. And we walked right up the stairway, or the walkway. We're going to go in right here into this archway. And I'm going to show you this building, the interior of this building. It's unbelievable. Then we're going to come back out. If we went into this archway, we can go into the cathedral, and we will get there too. We're going to come back down because there's other buildings over here that I want to show you. Now, if we go, let's back it up just one second. If we go into here, you will come up to one of those stairways that goes up about 8 stairs, and then there's a platform that turns around, and then it goes up again, okay? All right. I was quite excited about seeing that stairway, and this is it. Why? Because right there on the top of that stairway, are you familiar with the Harry Potter stories, the books and the movies? Okay. Harry Potter and his friends went to a school called Hogwarts, and it was a magician school. In the books and in the movie, every summer they're sent back home and they play around in wherever they live, and then to start the school year they all gather, and then they get on this train, and it's called the Hogwarts Express because that's the name of the school, and they travel up to their school, and they get off the train and they come in to the Hogwarts school. In Harry Potter 1, one of the professors, a woman by the name of Professor McGonagall, who was played by Maggie Smith, was standing right there on that stairway, and she watched the kids coming up. And this is what the kids looked like in Harry Potter 1. They were little bitty kids. They were 9 and 10 years old. And they were purposely cast at that age, and then over the series of the movies, they grew up, which is exactly what happened in the books. And it was interesting because I knew that, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to go to Christ Church. I knew that much of the filming had been done at that school and other schools and other locations in Oxford. And so I was kind of excited to just see that alone. And when you go up their stairs, you go into this room. This is called the Great Tudor Dining Hall, where you and your favorite 750 friends can eat at one time. Okay? They can sit 750 for one meal. Do you know what kind of staff you would have to do that? To prepare food on that level, to set the tables and chairs and all of the stuff and clean up all of that. It would be unbelievable. And it is a darn impressive. Just that part of it alone is impressive. But when you walk into this long, long room, you see all of these pictures on the walls. And it's an incredible pictures. And if you're familiar with English history and English religious history and English military history and governmental history, this is an incredible place to go see. And this is why. This picture is King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII was in charge of this school for a period of time and guaranteed that there would always be royal money coming into this school. No other school in Oxford has that. This one does. So this has always been the biggest. They want to say the best, but for those of us who went to other schools, we don't want to admit that. Okay? And it is incredible. But there's more. This is his daughter, Queen Elizabeth I. He ruled from 1509 to 1547. She ruled from 1558 to 1603. And so that father-daughter ruled England for almost a century. Yes, sir?
Did they go to school there?
Oh, heavens, no. No, no, no. Mm-mm. No, and that's a good question. I'm going to tie that in together because this picture right here is Cardinal Wolsey. Cardinal Wolsey was an advisor to Henry. Cardinal Wolsey started the school in the 1520s. Okay? And so Henry couldn't have gone there as a student. Elizabeth could have, but didn't. And Cardinal Wolsey had the buildings built. So we're talking, he had real money. Real money. Cardinal Wolsey also owned Hampton Court. And I don't know if that name means anything to you, but it is a gigantic palace complex just outside of London. In order to try and stay in good graces with Henry, Cardinal Wolsey gave away Hampton Court to the king and also this school to the king. Didn't do any good. King Henry had him beheaded anyway, because when you get out of favor with a king, it's never a good thing. It's not. Okay? Now, the rest of the pictures, and there are a few over here, and these over here, are the 17 later students who eventually in their lifetime become prime ministers of England. And they all went to this school. So we're talking about this school has had huge impact just on the government of England alone. Okay? And then the rest of the pictures are fascinating. They include both of the Wesley brothers. Those two founded the Methodist Church. And so there's some pretty impressive, high-profile people, and all these people are former college professors there. So when you walk in there, and you walk around and you take a look at it, it is really quite something to see. It really is. And so you spend a little bit of time just looking. And this is a picture it's actually a drawing. And this drawing is a little over 200 years old, but I want to include that because you can kind of see how big the place is. These are people, and if you assume they're 5.5, 6 foot tall, you can see how big this room is. And it is gigantic, and it is filled with very impressive, important, powerful people and their pictures. Now, back to Harry Potter for 1 minute. When Professor McGonagall, and this is her, right up here, gets the kids off of the Hogwarts Express, they're brought into this dining hall. This dining hall was used as the model for all of the eating scenes in all of the Harry Potter movies. And that was really kind of interesting because they would literally drop bowls of food down out of the sky onto your tables. And that would be an interesting way of serving. But it was quite an impressive thing, and you can see how many people can actually sit inside of that dining hall. So it is huge. It is just gigantic, huge. Now, so we have come in, we've seen this building, we're coming out of this door, we're going to walk right down here. We could go into the cathedral, but we're not going to yet. We'll come back and do that. And we're going to walk right down this walkway. And we're going to walk past a building and take a look up at the upper left-hand corner. You know what that is? It's a sundial. It only works half the time. Why? Why? No, why? No, you'd think that might be the answer. Is it light? Why? Why doesn't it work? And in Arizona, we of all people should understand why it doesn't work. Because we don't operate that way. We're not on what?
Daylight saving.
Thank you. Daylight saving time. In order to make a sundial correctly work, if you're advancing your clock, you're going to have to take the earth and move it an hour. Is that too easy to do?
No.
Not normally too easy to do. And so they've got this beautiful sundial that only works half the time. Isn't that the craziest thing?
That'd be a job we have.
Yeah, it would. But you go walking past this sundial, and then you turn this corner, and you come in front of this building. This is called the Fellows Library. That means that only professors can go in there. Students are not welcome in there. Every school has a Fellows Library, and then they also have, and then students have access to the main library downtown, which is called the Radcliffe Camera, and that library is one of 7 libraries in England that every day gets things that are published from all over their country. What does that mean? That means that library is so big, and it's all underground. Underground. So when you walk in and you want to check out something, you walk in, you show them your ID cards, and tell them what you want. They put it in the computer, and you come back the next day, because what they have to do is they have to get people on roller skates, and the hallways, in many cases, 2 and 3 miles long, and it's all underground. It is unbelievable how big that library is. And so you have to skate and to get to this, find the room where your stuff is and bring it back up, and it's unreal. It really is just unreal. But the Fellows Library, this is where the teachers can go. Is it an impressive place? Yes. He asked me, do you want to go into here? And I said, I've been hoping you would ask. Now, just before you walk in, there's a sign. And the sign says, in grateful memory of John Locke, who lived 1632 to 1704. He lies buried here. His philosophy guided the future of the United States of America. This was erected by American and British Commonwealth Association of the United States, 1957. James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, and the entire Founding Fathers generation were extremely well read on John Locke. Okay? In the Declaration of Independence, one of the phrases says that the reason we're declaring independence from England, according to Jefferson, is because we want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke said life, liberty, and property. And Jefferson knew that. He changed one of those concepts, even though knowing how important property is, he changed it to the pursuit of happiness, which is he was trying to define the American dream. But it all comes from John Locke, who was a pretty big deal in philosophy. We walked into the building, and my friend started talking to the secretary, and finally, because they knew each other, and he finally looked over at me and he says, "You want to just go upstairs and take a look at all the stuff upstairs?" And I said, "Yes, thank you," because that's where I really wanted to go, and I was really glad he sent me upstairs by myself, because I just wanted to wander. And on the way upstairs, they have another one of those stairwells that go up like this, and in the middle of the alcove on the center, trying to go up, is an 8-foot-tall statue of John Locke in Roman toga. Why Roman toga? Well, in Washington, D.C., there's a statue in the Capitol building of George Washington in Roman toga. And we all know that he didn't live in the time of Rome. And the statue makers, or the sculptors, are trying to associate greatness and knowledge of a prior time to a current figure. Okay? Anyway, that's the philosophy. So you go upstairs. This room, and it's a very narrow building. It's probably about, let's see. It's about from this wall to this wall, and it's about 150 feet long. It's just a long corridor, and on both sides you have beautiful, ornate bookcases, and they're just filled with books. And many of these books go back to the time of Gutenberg, who invented movable type in the 1460s. Okay? And some of them books predate that. Now think about that a minute. Think about that. Yes. Think about that a minute. Before the 1460s, if you wanted a book, you went and found a Catholic priest, because they're going to be literate, and not too many people are. Okay? So you go find a Catholic priest, and you help him find a book that you want. And then you hire him for 6 months, and he sits down with the book that you've now purchased, and he hand copies every page, every letter of every page into a blank book, and then when it gets all done, that is your book. And that's how you got anything.
It was in Latin, right?
It's what?
It was in Latin? Like you had to
Often it is in Latin. And so that's one of the reasons you go to the Catholic priest, because they are fluent in Latin. Okay? And so for any household to even have one book, even one printed page in their home, is a huge, huge thing. Okay? I'm going up and down just looking at all these, and I found a copy of a book by St. Thomas Aquinas, and he wrote in the 1200s, and one of the books that he wrote was a book called Summa Theologica, and that means the sum of all theological knowledge. And I knew about the book. And I came walking up to the book, and I just looked around, made sure that nobody was looking, and touched the book. Okay, I didn't pull it out, and I didn't open it up, I didn't dare, but I touched the book. That book was over 650 years old. Now, that's hard to even fathom. Yes, sir?
Were you allowed to pull them out?
Oh, heavens no.
Oh,
No, and that's why I didn't dare, because if I had have pulled it out, sure as heck, that guy and his secretary would have come walking up and just thrown me right out of my ear. And I did not want to mess up a very good thing, because I want to see a lot more than just this. But it was amazing just to see that. It really, really was. There also...
How was that paper preserved so well for all those years?
She's asking, how is the paper preserved? And that's a great question. First of all, it's vellum, and vellum has been treated when it was made to last a long time. Second of all, the buildings are, the humidity is controlled and all of that to try and help preserve everything they have. Okay? Now, there's also there a little stand that's about this tall, and it looks like a drum stand, because the legs come up, and then right about here on a tabletop, it's a circle, and the circle looks like a snare drum. And inside there is a skull cap that Cardinal Wolsey wore during his lifetime, and you have to remember that he was killed in 1532. So, that was almost 500 years old. And in just looking and seeing that, I'm going, wow, wow. How impressive. And some of the books are books that many of their college professors that had worked there over the centuries have written, including Charles Dodson. He wrote several math books, and some of those books are there. Now, so we're going to come back out of the building, come back, walk down the walkway, and we're going to go into right here to go into the giant cathedral. Okay? So you're getting the tour. You are. Now, when you walk into the cathedral, pretty soon you come in contact with the statue. Her name is Saint Friedzweed. She was in the 700s, and she was a Catholic nun that was sent to this area, because then there was nothing out there. And she was given the job of going out and starting a small monastery and starting to eventually help put together a school. In this work, while she was there, she came in contact with what we today would call a warlord. And he took a fancy to her, which is not appropriate as a Catholic nun. And in that process, he ended up getting struck blind, which I've always thought was kind of interesting. Now, you notice I said her name was Saint Friedzweed. In order to become, according to the Catholic Church, in order to have that title, you have to have a verifiable miracle. And yeah, it actually is 2 now, but then they let it be 1, okay? And her intervention helped restore his sight, and that was considered the miracle. What that really did was that also helped establish him almost as a protector of her. And that wasn't a bad thing either, at all. And she was able to accomplish all kinds of great things, and he supported and made sure that nobody messed with her ever again. So it turned out to be a good thing. She is buried somewhere in the area underneath that giant cathedral. They have no idea where, because it was over 1,000 years ago, and it's someplace, yeah, but they don't know where, and who would know? One of the reasons you go to cathedrals, again, like I told you on Monday, you go to cathedrals to see the stained glass, and this cathedral has magnificent stained glass. It is just amazing, amazing to see. You get wonderful pictures, biblical themed pictures, and the picture of Christ and apostles and all kinds of important biblical concept theme related pictures, and it is beautiful. Throughout in the cathedral, there are some very famous, important people that are buried there. One of them is this lady. Her name is Lady Margaret Beaufort. She's actually the grandmother of King Henry VIII. And her son, Henry VII, had been king for a while. He actually predeceased her. And so he died in 1507. His son, Henry VIII, became king. And she died in 1511. And so her grandson actually helped officiate at her funeral as King of England. And that is her. And again, these are really quite interesting because it looks like you've got this giant casket, and then it looks like they took the body out of the casket and put it on top of the casket, and the body just laid down and turned to stone. And it's just amazing to see. Or turned to brass or whatever the heck that stuff is. And it's just an incredible thing to see. One of the other famous people that are buried there is this man. And I'm just going to show you his picture first. This is an interesting sign that tells about him. And the sign says, this is a figure of a knight in full armor. His name is John de Noailles. He died in 1386. 1386. That means that he is, right now, he died 640 years ago. He was 6'6" tall. In the 1380s, the average male height was about 5'3". He was 6'6". So he was giant. Now, it says his head rests on a tilting helmet, a crust in the shape of an ox, and his feet lies a collared dog. I'm going to back up because he's laying on a very small carved ox, and at his feet is a dog. Why?
What was that his feet?
A dog.
A dog?
Yeah. Now, why? It's because a dog and an ox are considered good luck on your eternal journey into the hereafter. Okay? So, when you make plans for your funeral, make sure and include a dog and an ox on each end of the casket. Okay? Right. Sure. And the rest of your family is going to go, what? Why? And then you just tell them just because. And tell them don't mess with your wishes, right? Okay. All right. Now, we went on the tour of the cathedral, and it is gigantic. It is huge. And it is a long center beam, and it's just like a cross, a long corridor right in the middle, and then they will have, like this, they will have cross beams, and then they will have small little chapels all over the place where you can have small services if you have, like, for 20 people, like a baptism or a small wedding or a funeral or any number of small things, or if you want the whole chapel, you can get it. And so we went clear through the whole chapel, and it was just an incredible thing to see, and we're starting to walk out. We get to about right in here, and we've got a docent with us. And wherever you go into Europe, make sure you find a docent. And these are people who live locally, and they've lived there virtually all of their lives, and they know everything imaginable about the history of the buildings and about the town. Get a docent, and they're not hard to find, and most of them are free, and they just want to come and share knowledge with you, and they are delightful. The docent that we had on that day, and this is 2005, she had been a waif in the British Royal Air Force in World War II. She had flown planes. She was amazing. A little bitty old gal, and just bubbly and full of knowledge, and it was just fun talking to her the whole time. We get about right here, and I stopped. Just a minute. And she looked at me, and I said, there's a door right over here. And I could see it. And I said, see that door right over there? She said, yes. I said, if we open that door, can I see the green door? And she looked at me and she smiled. And she said, "You know about the green door?" I said, "Doesn't everybody know about the green door?" And she said, "No." And then she laughed because Americans are notoriously ignorant about culture of other countries. And so I said, and then I asked her again, "Can we open the door so I can see the green door?" And she said, "Of course." And so she walked over and we opened the door and I got to see the green door. I was thrilled. Now, let's see what the significance of the green door is, okay? Because I'm right here, I'm looking through, the green door is part of this wall. It's a door in a giant fence, okay? It's a gate. And it's right along this wall. This was the fellows' library that I showed you. Right over here is the dean of the college's house and his family. That's where they live, okay? Now, this part of the used to be where the fellows would live, or the full-time professors. In the 1860s, one of the professors was Charles Dodgson. Remember, this is who we're talking about. I'm giving you all this background to get to this point, okay? Charles Dodgson. And yes, I've wandered all over heck and gone to kind of get you here, but anyway, Charles Dodgson actually lived there. He lived on the back side over here. He has a window that, and he's on the second story, he has a window that he can see down into this giant grass area. And one morning he's sitting at his desk right by the window. He looks out. All of a sudden the green door opens. Two little girls come running through, and they open the green door, step out, close the green door, run right across on the walkway to the door of the chapel that I saw and asked to be opened so I can see the green door. They came running right down through there and went to church services. He knew who they were. They were the daughter of the dean and his wife. Okay? And so he just watched this happen, and about an hour later, they came back. And it dawned on him, he not only knows them, and he knows where they're going and what they're doing, but he started thinking about this. You know how sometimes something happens that doesn't seem like a big deal, and all of a sudden your brain starts to take off and starts to work. His started to work. One of the little girls' name is Alice. Alice in Wonderland. That's where the story started. When they came running through the green door for the first time, and he saw them, and he went, ding. Now, it takes a while to make that happen, but that's where the story starts. And that's why I had to give you all of this background to have you understand who he is and what he is, what the place he is, to start the story. Now let's go back to find out more about him. Okay, this is him. He grew up in Oxford. He taught math at Christ Church. He lived there. He moved in there in the early 1850s. He lived there until his death in 1898. He was one of 11 children. And once you become a fellow there, if you want to stay living there, you can, but you can never marry. Because if you marry, you're kicked out. Which sounds crazy. And so you have a whole bunch of single men, all of who had been raised in homes around children. Now all of a sudden, there's virtually no kids because they're teaching college. And the only kids are the dean or the principal's children. Okay? So that's an important thing to remember. This is where Oxford is. This is where London is. This is where the city of Bath is? You remember on Tuesday when I talked about Jane Austen? The city of Bath is right there. Okay? Stonehenge is just down south and east of Bath. And that's another story, but that's a phenomenal experience too. All right, now, and in Stratford, from Shakespeare's time, Stratford is right up here. It's about 90 miles, and Oxford is about 30 miles to Stratford. Okay? Anyway, that'll kind of give you some geography. Okay, this is where he started. Now, he started as a very young man. He went there as a student. They were so impressed that he was so good at math, he aced all the tests, that they invited him to stay as a college professor. That's kind of nice. You don't have to go out and job interview. You don't have to go out and campaign. You don't have to do anything. Just stay right here and have your work right. Great, great. And he did. Now, he also became a clergyman for the Church of England. He was an ordained minister. However, he was never assigned a parish. He was never, he never went and left and been in charge of this town, anything like that. He just stayed right there. But that was often part of the educational process. Please.
And then he was considered a clergyman?
He had the title, but he never really practiced as a clergyman. Okay? All right. Now, in the mid-50s, the dean with his family, his name was Henry George Liddell. He and his family moved into that town, or into that home. They had a little boy named George, and often he, Lewis Carroll, would take that little boy out hiking up and down the river just to have little kid company. And often the faculty would get together and host children from all of the schools, and just to be around kids. And it was often that would take place. They would sometimes go on the river there and take a little boat ride on the river, and often the kids would say, well, tell us stories, because they found out pretty quickly Lewis Carroll was really good at just creating stories. And one day he started telling a story. And he used the name Alice.
Wonderland.
Yes, yes, exactly. Alice in Wonderland. And he started telling about going down the rabbit hole, about the huge city, about all the different characters. And that day, at the end of the day, and Alice and her sister went home and told her parents about the story. The dean, the next day, came knocking on his door. That would make you nervous. I know, anytime the principal showed up at my schoolroom door, I'm going, good to see you, maybe. Okay? And so the dean knocked on his door. Can I come in and talk to you? Sure. What do you say? And so the dean came in, and he said, our daughter came home and told us about this wonderful story. Now, we like the story. And then all of a sudden Lewis Carroll goes, oh, okay, if that's all this is, then we're okay. We're okay. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to get serious about this. I want you to write down the story. I want you to flesh it out and make it a big thing. And I will help you get it published. I will also help get an artist to come in and help illustrate this book. Okay, I can do that. That'll work. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Yay. Okay. And that is exactly what happened. And so he started writing the book, that it became the book, Alice in Wonderland. Okay? Now, this is a picture of Alice. And she was about 9 years old when he first met her. And she's always been kind of an enigmatic figure, and it's been very interesting to read into the story to see how he was kind of the father figure that kind of watched from afar and helped her and encouraged her in getting through the various experiences of her life. Now, I've always loved this quote out of Alice in Wonderland, and it says, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? That depends entirely, a good deal, on where you want to go." "Oh, I don't care much care where." "Then it doesn't matter which way you go." What was going on here is Lewis Carroll is trying to say, make up your mind what you want to do with your life, and then go forward and do it. But if you just wander all over the place, make new decisions every other day, you won't have any focus and you won't accomplish anything. Focus and move forward in your life. It was good advice then. It's still good advice today. It really is. This is a picture in 2010 of the movie Alice in Wonderland, and Alice looking down the rabbit hole, trying to figure out what she's going to do. Okay? And do you dare jump into that? And that was always the question. Now, as part of the second book, Through the Looking Glass, Lewis Carroll included a poem that he had written much earlier, because he would periodically go back home to his family home, and his sisters and their kids would all gather around, and they would play all kinds of crazy games, and they would often play a game of words and try to create new words. And he created a poem in about 2 hours, and that poem has always been, to me, one of the fun, all-time great poems. And in case you didn't bring your copy of the poem with you, I brought you a copy. Okay? Because I want you to have a copy of this poem, and we're going to talk about this poem. And it's called Jabberwocky. Now, before you get into it, there's one term I need to have you understand. And it's a French term. And it is called portmanteau. And this is what portmanteau is. And you need to know this in order for this to make some sense, okay? Now, portmanteau is you take a perfectly good word over here, you take another perfectly good word over here, you cut each word in half, and you take half of one and half of the other one, and you put it together and make a brand new word. Okay? And then that means you get a brand new definition, right? Think about that for a minute as we're going through the poem. We're going to go clear through it once, and we're going to start and talk about it so that you can figure out what is going on. Okay? 'Twas brillig in the slithy toves, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mumsy were the borogoves and the mumraths outgrabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son. The jaws that bite, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jubjub bird and the frumious bandersnatch. Long time the maxim foe he sought. Then rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the jabberwock, with eyes of flame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal sword went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he came galumphing back. And hast thou slain the jabberwock? Oh, come to mine arms, my beamish boy. O frabtuous day, calloo, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toves, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mumsy were the borogoves and the mumraths outgrabe.
What did you just say?
Do what?
What did you just say?
Okay, now I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to give you a test. Now you have to translate everything I just said, okay? Ready? Go. Okay. Now, we're going to skip stanzas 1 and 7 for just a minute. We'll come back to that. But I want to look at stanzas 2 through 6 for just a minute. And that is a story. There are two people in the story. Look at the line where it says, beware the Jabberwock, my what? Son. So who is talking? Father of a son. The father is just about to send the son out into the world. And he's trying to give him advice. That whole stanza is advice. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird and the frumious bandersnatch. Meaning, son, there are three things at all costs I want you to avoid. Don't you even mess with them. Don't you even go anywhere near them. Beware the Jabberwock, beware the Jubjub bird, and beware the frumious bandersnatch. What are they? We're not necessarily really sure, but if the father is trying to get the son to avoid them, then you should avoid them. However, and I'm sure that none of your children ever instantly jump to do everything you said. Right? They absolutely couldn't wait until they could do everything you said, right? Sure. Beware the Jabberwock, son. Don't mess with this. What did the son do? What do teenagers do? The first thing you tell them, don't do this. What's the first thing you do? They go after whatever it is you said don't do, right? Beware the Jabberwock, my son. So what did the son do? He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time, the maxim foe he saw. He went after the Jabberwock for quite a while, long time. And then he finally got tired of it, and it says, because he rested he by the tum-tum tree and stood a while in thought. So he's just leaning up against the tree, just kind of catching his breath, because he's been out walking for a long time. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, around the corner, the number one thing that he's been told to avoid, that he's after, is the Jabberwock. This was the first drawing in the first publication of that book, the Jabberwock. Now, would you want to mess with something like that? If you are this size, even if you have a vorpal sword, do you want to mess with this? And the son, I'm sorry?
Not today.
Not today, no kidding. Maybe tomorrow I'll be stronger, right? Okay. Now, and as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes aflame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. That means it's making noise, it's breathing, it's got fire going all over the place. Sounds like something you don't want to mess with. The father has told the son, don't mess with this, because they have, in line 6, jaws that bite and claws that catch. Is there anything in our society that we don't want to mess with that has jaws that bite and claws that catch? Heroin, meth, even tobacco, excessive use of alcohol. What does all that do to a human body? It ruins it. It ruins it. Okay? So the father's trying to give the son good advice. Some things in life, son, you don't want to mess with. And the son is taking it on. And the son pulls out the sword. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal sword went snicker-snack. He left it dead. And with its head, he has even cut off the head of the beast. And with its head, he came galumphing back. Let's stop for a minute. Galumphing. Remember what portmanteau is? You take two perfectly good words and you divide them in half and put half of each of the words together. If you know that, where did the word galumph come from? Take that apart and put them back to where they came from. What are those other words? Probably gallop And what's the other one? How about triumph? To gallop triumphantly. Is it ever a moment in your life where you could gallop triumphantly? Well, I don't know about you, but when I graduated from college, on the first time I got a degree in college, and they called my name, I went running up there and grabbed it and took it away from them just in case they were going to change their mind. Okay? And others, and I was glad to have it, and boy, I was just hanging on to that for all it's worth. Some people did cartwheels. They are galumphing. They are galloping triumphantly. They are throwing their hat in the air. They're screaming. They're happy. They have a right to be. They've earned that. Galumphing means you have earned the right to express yourself and be happy because you've done something major. Okay? He came galumphing back. Galumphing to where? His family home. Because Dad is still home. Dad's out on the porch, and Dad can hear the kid screaming. The kid is running toward. The kid is waving his sword. He's got the head of the Jabberwock. He is screaming, and Dad comes out and can hear this, and Dad can see this. Dad says, "Hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Oh, come to mine arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjous day, callooh, callay." He chortled in his joy. The dad is thrilled because the son has conquered something that maybe even the dad couldn't conquer. And he's very happy with his son. And what a great moment for the family. So even that little part of the story is marvelous. And then we repeat stanza number 1. "'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mumsy were the borogoves, and the mumrats outgrabe." Turn the paper over. And I'm sorry that the print is so small, and I apologize for that, and I couldn't find a way, because this has information that's important, but I couldn't find a way to make it bigger. Sorry, because that's kind of small. Okay? This is a list of some of those terms. Some of them. All right? And I don't know if you can read those, but the first one says brillig. Brillig is the time of boiling dinner. Okay? Now, so that means 4:30 in the afternoon, because that's when the main meal in England is eaten. I'm sorry?
Boiled potatoes.
And it has to do with some of that. Okay? Because you're boiling. Slithy has to do with, it's a combination of slimy and lithe, or very active, athletically active, smooth and active, tove, and it goes all the way through and gives all kinds of bizarre definitions. Okay? On other explanations, because Humpty Dumpty in Through the Looking Glass gives some more definitions. And this is where, you begin boiling things for dinner. And it kind of helps us to begin to understand. Throughout the rest of Lewis Carroll's life, people kept asking him, what do all these words mean? And he tried to tell them, oh, this is not good, is it? No. My lens just fell out of my glasses. That's not good. All right. No. And people kept asking Lewis Carroll, I don't understand. Do you know what his response was? I don't understand all of them either, but they sure are great words, aren't they? And I've always thought that was wonderful. And so people since him, along the way, have decided that they had too much time on their hands, and they've tried to translate all this stuff. And you can find books that try to translate it. It's that person's opinion. Could it be right? Yeah, it could be right. Could it be wrong? Yeah, it could be wrong. But I've always just liked the mysticism of the sound of the words. I really do. I think that they are absolutely incredible. Now, Lewis Carroll spent the rest of his life there at Christ Church and lived out his life and died in 1898. He had a little bit of a problem dealing with the notoriety that the books brought him. And they brought a lot of notoriety. Alice in Wonderland sold all kinds of volumes. And one day, he got a letter from Windsor Castle, and it was from Queen Victoria, handwritten. And she told him that she loved the book, and she would like him to send her a hand-signed copy of the book. Well, of course you're going to send the Queen a hand-signed copy of your book. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She also went on to say, plus, I want a signed copy of your next book. 2 years later, he published another book and signed it and sent it off to her. That book was about logarithms. He was a math teacher.
What was it?
Logarithms.
Logarithm.
Okay, now, I don't think that she meant she wanted a book about logarithms. And so 4 years later, when he published Through the Looking Glass, he sent that one to her. And I'm sure that that was what she was really, yes, yeah. That was what she really was after. Okay? Right across the street from Christ Church, there is a delightful little store. This building, and it's all a whole bunch of little shops, and this is the Alice shop. And it's a delightful little place to go into and see all kinds of things about Alice in Wonderland. He was just a very interesting individual. And in closing, I want to tell you one last thing about him. Unfortunately, we live in a time where there's been all kinds of stories and debris that have come out. And they claim that he was even a child pervert, to put it kindly. And I want to tell you one thing about that. First of all, she, meaning Alice, he died in 1898. She, Alice, was brought from England over to America in 1932 on what would have been his 100th birthday. And she was interviewed by all kinds of people.
That was
Now,
the year I was born.
Was it really? You didn't attend?
I didn't attend. They
Okay.
didn't invite me.
And she was interviewed by all kinds of people. And he had been dead for almost 35 years. She never once said that he had ever said or done anything inappropriate in any way to her. And I just want to pass that on because that needs to be shared. Because in our day and time, too much of culture wants to jump to worst case scenario. Well, if it was this, it had to be this kind of thing. And I like to believe that everybody that does that is developing big leg muscles and jumping to conclusions. And that's what it really was. Okay? All right. And this is the last thing.